Good morning. I'm going to come on and make a little bit of time to talk about a couple different things when it comes to expansion, ascension, new earth. And that is our understanding within ourselves, which ultimately, because we're relational beings, we want to connect. There's a lot of talk about twin flames, karmic connections, divine unions. And then I also want to talk about the different projections of what's really going on and what the earth really looks like and where it really comes from and how it's been shaped and what the true line of expansion or enlightenment is. So the first thing I want to share is that this has been an evolution of mine and process where what I used to think isn't necessarily my truth anymore, but I use pieces of what was shown to me or came through me in my own Akashic records, in my own blueprint, through my own personal evolution. So let's start with the relationships, the divine union, the karmic connections, the twin flames. Twin flames is a umbrella term. And twin flames, the first portion of it is in karma. The largest portion of it is in karma. And it's an evolutionary process between two souls of the same, you see my throat's getting, so this is some truth, of the same resonance. Residence. Think about what that means to you. What does it mean to be in the same residence? Family, right? But we don't necessarily mean like same frequency, which we would see in the bloodline, because we can live with people that aren't in our bloodline, like our spouses, our friends. We can even share space with what used to be strangers. So the same resonance, what resonates within the energy field. And depending upon how that energy evolves is how close you get to the same frequency. So the twin flame dynamic will switch through sometimes within the same relationship, but for the most part, your whole entire life. If you came here to run that course, then you're going to be processing through different relationships that you had, including, well, most importantly, your father, your grandfather, or people that were in that role for you. And then you will meet relationships that will trigger learning, trigger understanding, trigger growth, trigger sight, trigger knowledge, trigger expansion, trigger your Akashic records. That ultimately that relationship helps you see yourself in the more purest light possible. That doesn't mean like no we want shadow. That makes us matter. We want to evolve it and understand it. Interesting, because I see this rainbow light coming across. So like third eye, right? Open the third eye and understand it. We'll talk more about that when I have more time to really isolate on this conversation. I just wanted to do a brief touch over of it. That ultimately at the end of the day, you birth your twin flame. And if that relationship is resolved in the way that you've designed it to be, then it moves back into an outside romantic connection. But there's like a bit of space in between karma and dharma. It's called the doula space. It's kind of being in the hallway waiting to get called in. That relationship that really sparked a lot of energy in you, it was the last relationship before you birthed your son. Or maybe there are designs that, okay, so I want to stay with birthing the son. So the relationship that sparked ultimately the connection with the son to release that comes back around. And it's usually the relationship that people will call their twin if they're at that evolutionary process. And then you are kind of hanging out in the hallway, deciding on a soul level what to do. Because when you move into Dharma, that twin has the potential. That's a potential timeline to turn into the divine union. And there's a lot that goes into that, because there are also divine unions in Dharma that have only been that. They won't necessarily go through the internal struggle to move out of like very deep density, very deep karmic lines, but they are here to activate each other in DNA and become the divine couple that then goes on to do whatever it is that they do. So they're two separate concepts that blur. So we can talk. I want to come on and talk more in depth about that, because there's lots of ins and outs. I can't just have one straight conversation on it, because it won't make sense. Because these relationships are designing our quantum field that we live in. The second is, why are there so many different views on, see us up here now? Like, that's the crown. Let's open it up. Because there's so many different views, because we're all designed a little bit differently. And in some of these layers of dimensional space that are making up the 15-dimensional time matrix that humanity lives in, there is a flow of information. It's important to connect with yourself. Well, it's always important to connect with yourself, but it's important to trust what you're hearing and allow that to connect in with you. But then there are dimensional spaces that are very structured. They bring matter, form, design. And so you will hear them talking in terms of like absolutes. This is absolutely what's happening. And it's up for you to discern whether that's something that you connect in with, all, some, none. But it still holds its space in the design. And depending upon how evolved that person's soul is, that maybe is now them as a human being, is how much information they will know, and how beautiful that they'll be able to share it with. Like, there are some people that explain like absolutes in a just gorgeous tone, frequency, and that's called the evolution of who they are. But ultimately, since we're jumping all over making this design that we live in, nothing is absolute. But if you're in that layer of consciousness, it is. But as soon as you connect out into another consciousness that is about evolution and flow and calling forth your own design, there's nothing absolute in that. And it requires you to really trust yourself. And ultimately, most of those dimensional spaces that make up the mattered version of who we are, the time matrix, really rely heavily on you growing up from the inside and really learning about who you are and what you know, taking where you came from and your past experiences to help you decide what you connect with, what path for you to go down. Go within, what path for you to go within. And even evolutionary wise, the first path is out. What's above is below. The second path is in. And there's a whole lot of information that goes with that I'm excited to spend time processing and talking about, but we'll do it in chunks. Because otherwise we'll just sit there going blah, blah, blah forever. And we all got things to do. And I don't think I could explain it in one sitting, even if we had 50,000 hours, because I would start going, we. My gift is that I can connect the different layers, that I don't necessarily need to know all the information in. And many of them, I don't hardly know anything. I just know a little bit to get tapped in so I can thread it into a design. And what I try to do is pull the highest timeline reality in and deliver it. But at the same time, when I'm pulling that reality in, I don't want it to not make sense, because then what's the point? You're not going to make sense of it, or it's not going to resonate with you to make sense with it in your own way. So I really am trying to calculate and design. I'm prettying it up. I'm dolling it up in in desire that those that are watching it, the message is being delivered in a way that can be understood. So have a beautiful day. I will be bye. I'll be back soon.